Betrayed, run over, and teetering between life and death, Lisa embarks on a journey that will change her forever. After catching her husband, Charles, in a devastating affair with the maid, Lisa storms out in shock, only to suffer a severe accident. In the hospital, unconscious and vulnerable, she battles for her survival, unaware that a new danger looms. Charles, fearing the fallout of his infidelity being exposed, is plotting an even more sinister act. The sound of rain hitting the windows of the colonial-style house felt like a premonition. It was an afternoon like many others in Nashville, but for Lisa Thompson, time seemed to stand still. In the kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the soft scent of lilacs she liked to keep on the table. Dressed in a simple blouse and sweatpants, she was organizing the accounting papers for the small antique shop she managed downtown. Lisa and Charles's marriage was, in everyone's eyes, an example of perfection. He, a renowned lawyer, was often praised for his intelligence and charisma. She, a hard-working woman with a gentle smile that masked unshakable strength. Together, they seemed to be the couple everyone envied. However, as time would reveal, appearances deceive. Lisa had noticed subtle changes in Charles's behavior over the past few months. He stayed at work longer, responded with vague "I love yous" when she surprised him with affectionate gestures, and his cell phone seemed to have become a closely guarded secret. Even so, she refused to give in to suspicion. Perhaps it was the fear of uncovering something that could destroy the world they had built. That was why, on this particular afternoon, Lisa decided to surprise him. Charles had a meeting scheduled at home, and she, eager to share some news that filled her with joy, wanted to make everything perfect. That morning, Lisa had discovered she was pregnant. The pharmacy test was still in her purse, and she was already imagining Charles's expression when she shared the news. Despite recent doubts about their marriage, she believed that this baby could reignite the spark between them. When Charles arrived home, the atmosphere felt heavy. He entered with quick steps, tossing his briefcase onto the living room sofa. He wore a grey suit and a crooked tie, muttering something about a stressful day. Lisa, trying to lighten the mood, served him a cup of coffee and prepared to share her news. "Charles, I need to tell you something," she began, but before she could continue, he interrupted. "Can it wait, Lisa? I need to take care of some things in the office." She hesitated, but eventually agreed. Charles went upstairs, and she heard the muffled sound of the office door closing. Trying to hold on to her excitement, Lisa decided to follow him gently, hoping to find the right moment to speak. In the hallway, what she heard made her freeze. Muffled laughter, intimate murmurs. She pressed her ear to the door, her heart pounding. With trembling hands, she turned the doorknob and slowly pushed the door open. There, before her eyes, was Charles, holding the face of the young housemaid, Grace. Their kiss was passionate and shameless, as if the world around them didn't exist. Lisa's world collapsed. Without saying a word, she let out a broken sigh and left the room. Charles heard her steps and, realizing what had happened, ran after her. "Lisa, wait! It's not what it looks like." She didn't want to hear it. Every word he said felt like an insult to the pain consuming her. Grabbing her car keys, Lisa ran out the front door. The rain intensified, and the city blurred as she drove aimlessly. The headlights of cars reflected on the wet asphalt, creating a spectacle of hazy lights, but Lisa saw none of it. Her mind was stuck on what she had witnessed. Charles's guilty gaze, the betrayal crushing her dreams and hopes. And then, it happened. An intersection, a speeding car, a sudden braking. Too late. The impact threw her against the steering wheel. Shattered glass, and the sound of crumpling metal filled the air. When Lisa opened her eyes briefly, she saw a white ceiling and fluorescent lights before losing consciousness again. The smell of antiseptic, the sound of heart monitors, and the hurried voices of doctors surrounded her. She didn't know it yet, but she was in one of Nashville's top hospitals fighting between life and death. Charles arrived at the hospital minutes after being notified. His face was pale, but not with worry. He knew Lisa had seen him with Grace. Worse, he feared what she might do when she woke up. While Lisa lay unconscious, doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to stabilize her. Her injuries were severe, but there was a chance she would survive. Charles, however, saw only the threat she posed to his reputation. In the days that followed, he visited her room solely to maintain appearances. Sitting by her bed, he watched Lisa's pale face and felt the weight of the consequences looming. He needed a solution, but the one that seemed viable was terrifying. On a cold night, Charles made a decision that would change their lives forever. The darkness of the hospital room seemed to mirror the malevolence consuming his mind. The soft blue pillow in his hands felt almost inviting. He knew the security cameras might pose a problem, but he chose to ignore the risk. Approaching the bed, he stared at Lisa. She looked fragile, defenseless, as if life was already slipping away. He hesitated for a moment. Perhaps there was a flicker of humanity within him, but it was fleeting. As he pressed the pillow over her face, the heart monitor beside her blared. The sound was deafening. Nurses stormed into the room. Charles stepped back, letting the pillow fall. Before he could escape, security guards arrived. He tried to explain, but the security footage was damning. Unconscious, Lisa was unaware that the attempted murder had caused more than physical trauma. She was pregnant, but the accident and the attack resulted in the loss of her baby. Charles was taken to the police station, where the evidence was enough to ensure his preventive detention. His facade as the perfect husband had shattered, and now he faced the consequences of his actions. At the hospital, Lisa continued to fight for her life. Unconscious, her frail body seemed to carry the weight of both pain and the hope for a new beginning. In the silence of the hospital room, the world seemed to have come to a halt. Lisa lay there motionless, yet her presence felt almost tangible. Each machine attached to her body seemed like a distant echo of her internal battle, as though her very soul was resisting the pull of darkness. Beside her bed, a nurse adjusted the equipment, her expression a blend of compassion and fatigue. It wasn't uncommon to face such intense human tragedies in that place, but Lisa's story touched her differently. While Lisa hovered between life and death, the city of Nashville carried on with its frenetic routine. The hospital stood near the bustling downtown, an area where neon lights and billboards competed for the attention of passers-by. There, in the stark contrast between the city's hustle and the hospital's quiet corridors, Charles faced the beginning of his own downfall. Charles had grown up in a wealthy family. The youngest son of a respected state judge, he learned early on that status and appearances mattered more than feelings. His father, always cold and distant, shaped in Charles a self-preserving nature. He grew up never feeling the weight of his actions, believing that anything was justifiable if it protected his image. This very mindset had been instrumental in his success as a lawyer, where manipulating situations and people became almost second nature. With that same calculated coldness, he chose Lisa as his partner. She was beautiful, hard-working, but above all, loyal. Her unwavering dedication to their marriage and to her antique shop in downtown Nashville represented the stability Charles wanted to project to the world. Yet over time, stability turned into monotony, and monotony in his distorted view created room for betrayal. Lisa, on the other hand, was a woman of humble roots. The daughter of local musicians, she grew up hearing stories about how country music was the soul of Nashville. Her parents, though never finding great success, taught her to value love and honesty above all else. This upbringing shaped a woman who believed in second chances, but also carried a vulnerability that Charles had exploited. When they met, he was the man who promised stability, while she offered a sincere heart. Over the years, Lisa gave everything to their marriage. Her antique shop was a reflection of herself, simple yet full of meaning. Every piece told a story, like the early 20th century chest she kept as the centerpiece of her store. The chest reminded Lisa of her own roots, a story full of layers, not all of them beautiful, but all of them important. Charles's betrayal was a devastating blow, not only because it broke her trust, but because it shook the very foundation of who she believed herself to be. To Lisa, marriage was a partnership, an unbreakable commitment. Catching Charles with Grace wasn't just a betrayal of loyalty, it was a declaration that everything she valued could be destroyed in an instant. Grace, the young and cheerful housemaid, was an enigmatic figure in this scenario. Hired just over a year ago, she had proven to be helpful and discreet. Lisa never imagined that behind her bright eyes and soft voice was a woman who would become involved with Charles. But the truth was that Grace had her own motivations. From a small town in rural Tennessee, she was fighting to establish herself in Nashville. Her relationship with Charles, though full of empty promises, seemed like her chance to climb the social ladder. As Lisa remained unconscious, the impact of her absence began to ripple through the world around her. At the antique shop, Clara, her longtime friend and assistant, stepped in to take temporary charge. Clara was a middle-aged woman with graying hair always tied in a messy bun. To her, Lisa was more than a boss. She was a soul sister. Clara's heart had been heavy since the accident, and her anger at Charles was almost impossible to contain. At the hospital, Lisa's battle continued. The doctors knew each day was critical. Despite the severity of her condition, there were faint signs of progress, as if something within her refused to give up. Lisa's face, still pale, was a canvas hiding the storms raging through her unconscious mind. Charles, in preventive custody, faced an entirely different reality. The cell he occupied was cold and cramped, a bitter irony for someone who had always valued luxury. Stripped of his status, he began to feel the weight of his actions. Worse still, his nights were haunted by regret, or at least by the realization that his perfect life had crumbled. News of the case spread quickly through Nashville. It wasn't every day that a prominent lawyer was accused of attempting to murder his own wife. Public judgment was unforgiving. Colleagues avoided mentioning Charles's name, while former clients cancelled contracts. The damage to his reputation was irreparable. In one of his rare moments of clarity, Charles was informed about Lisa's pregnancy and the loss of their baby. The news struck him like a sharp blow. For the first time, he seemed to grasp the full scope of his actions. It wasn't just about Lisa. It was about a life that never had the chance to begin. Yet even this realization wasn't enough to redeem him in the eyes of those who knew him. Meanwhile, Clara spent hours at the hospital, sitting by Lisa's bedside. She talked about the shop, about the new items that had arrived, as if hoping her friend would respond at any moment. Her voice was soft, but carried a hope that seemed almost unreal. To Clara, Lisa was a survivor, someone who would face the pain and emerge stronger. The city, with its bustling streets and bars filled with music, carried on. But for those close to Lisa, time seemed frozen. The antique shop, the hospital, the prison, they were scenes connected by invisible threads of pain, regret, and hope. Lisa, still motionless, was the center of this small universe. Her body fought to heal, while her mind, even unconscious, seemed to absorb the changes unfolding around her. In the hospital room, Lisa began showing her first signs of recovery. Small involuntary movements in her hands and the faint trembling of her lips signaled that her fight for life was not in vain. The nurses noticed the progress and informed the doctors, who adjusted her medications in hopes of accelerating her responsiveness. Lisa's battle against unconsciousness was slow, but each step forward brought a glimmer of hope to Clara, who remained steadfast by her side. Charles, in prison, couldn't erase the sound of the cardiac alarm that had interrupted him the night he tried to smother Lisa. The sound echoed endlessly in his mind, a constant accusation. He vividly remembered her closed eyes and the hesitation in his hand before he pressed the pillow down. That moment of hesitation now haunted him more than the fear of bars or public judgment. Somewhere deep within, Charles may have known his downfall was inevitable. Charles's defense attorney, a longtime associate who had worked with him on delicate cases, was reluctant to take the case. He knew the weight of the evidence against Charles was overwhelming. Security cameras had clearly captured the attempted murder, and the nurses' testimonies were damning. Still, the attorney advised Charles to claim he had acted in an emotionally altered state, without real intent to cause harm. Charles agreed, not because he believed in the strategy, but because he saw no other way out. Meanwhile, Lisa finally opened her eyes. The brightness of the room made her blink several times before she could discern her surroundings. The steady beeping of monitors and the feeling of tubes attached to her body brought her back to reality. Her body felt heavy, as if anchored by an invisible weight. She tried to speak, but her dry throat wouldn't allow it. Instead, tears rolled down her cheeks, the first sign that her mind was beginning to process what had happened. Clara was the first to notice. She grasped Lisa's hand and called a nurse, who immediately alerted the doctors. Lisa's recovery, though slow, was deemed miraculous by the medical team. However, the news of her miscarriage was withheld until she was strong enough to hear it. The revelation was devastating. Lisa couldn't hold back the sob that escaped her throat as the doctor explained. Memories of her plan to tell Charles about the pregnancy came rushing back, cruel and relentless. She remembered the smile she had imagined on his face, the hope that the baby could usher in a new chapter for their marriage. Now, it was all gone. Clara tried to comfort her, but Lisa seemed distant, lost in her grief. Charles' betrayal was an open wound, but the loss of the baby was a pain she didn't know how to endure. No words could lessen the weight of that absence, and the silence of the hospital room became suffocating. Days later, Lisa received a visit from the detective handling Charles's case. He explained the details of the attempted murder, revealing that the event had been recorded by security cameras. Lisa listened in silence, clutching the bedsheets tightly as the detective spoke. Each word felt like a blow, but they also awakened something inside her, a cold, growing anger. Lisa requested to see the footage. The detective hesitated but ultimately agreed, believing it might help her process the gravity of what had happened. When the video played, showing Charles pressing the pillow against her face, Lisa felt her blood run cold. It was like watching a nightmare unfold, something she could never have imagined from the man she had loved. After the video ended, Lisa asked to be left alone. She stared at her trembling hands and realized that something within her had changed forever. The woman who once believed in love, loyalty, and family no longer existed. In her place was someone who understood the cost of betrayal and the depths of pain. Meanwhile, Charles was grappling with the consequences of his actions, a mix of despair and regret. In prison, he began to see his meticulously constructed world crumble. Colleagues and longtime friends had abandoned him, and rumors about his case spread throughout the city. Even his family, who had always supported him, were shocked by the severity of the accusations. During the preliminary hearing, Charles was confronted with the evidence. The judge, firm and direct, dismissed any argument about an altered emotional state. The footage spoke for itself. The trial date was set, and Charles was informed that he would remain in preventive custody. For Lisa, that period was an emotional roller coaster. Each physical therapy session was a reminder of the accident. Each look from Clara carried a mix of pity and admiration. Lisa didn't want to be seen as a victim. Despite her pain, something inside her demanded justice, not just in a legal sense. She knew the fight ahead would be more complex, involving her mind, body, and above all, her ability to rebuild a life that felt shattered. As the weeks passed, Lisa began to regain her physical strength, yet the emotional scars proved harder to heal. She avoided mirrors, fearing the reflection of a woman she barely recognized. But one sunny morning, something shifted. While Clara was tidying up the room, Lisa asked for a pair of scissors. Without hesitation, she cut her long hair, which had always been her trademark. When she was done, she looked in the mirror for the first time since the accident. She didn't see the same Lisa, but that was exactly what she wanted. News of Lisa's recovery quickly reached Charles. He was shaken to learn that she was conscious and prepared to testify at the trial. Though he knew there was no chance of escaping conviction, the thought of facing Lisa in court terrified him. For the first time, he would have to confront not just justice, but the gaze of the woman he had betrayed and nearly destroyed. The trial date drew closer, and Lisa, despite her lingering pain, was determined to face Charles and the court. It was her way of reclaiming her strength, of showing that, despite everything, she was still the author of her own story. The courtroom was packed on the day of Charles's first public hearing. Local newspapers had covered the scandal extensively, turning Lisa into a symbol of compassion and Charles into a paragon of betrayal and violence. The constant click of cameras and murmured conversations echoed through the halls as Clara helped Lisa navigate the chaos. Lisa wore a light blue dress, chosen by Clara, who said the color symbolized strength and serenity. Still recovering, Lisa's steps were slow but steady. The courtroom's dark wooden walls and oppressive atmosphere could have been intimidating, but she faced every glance with quiet determination. As they waited for the session to begin, a man approached. He wore a modest suit, but his presence was striking. "My name is Adam," he said respectfully. "I'm the prosecutor assigned to Charles's case. I want you to know I'll do everything I can to ensure he faces justice." Lisa acknowledged him with a nod. Despite Adam's confident tone, the thought of reliving every detail of what had happened filled her with anxiety. Clara squeezed her hand, offering silent comfort. Meanwhile, in prison, Charles received an unexpected visit from his older sister, Meredith. A woman of few words, Meredith's presence always carried weight. Sitting across the glass barrier, she looked at her brother with a mix of disappointment and curiosity. "Why, Charles?" she asked bluntly. He hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Admitting he had acted out of fear of exposure felt as weak as it sounded, but Meredith didn't wait for an answer. "You always had everything. more opportunities, more support. And yet you chose to destroy the one person who truly loved you. I hope you understand what you've lost, because there's no going back." Her words echoed in Charles's mind for days. In the cold solitude of his cell, he began revisiting moments from his marriage to Lisa. He remembered the nights she stayed up late working to help pay for his education, the times she cancelled her own plans to support him at professional events. His betrayal wasn't just a mistake. It was a reflection of his inability to value what truly mattered. Meanwhile, at the antique shop, Clara worked to restore the rhythm of sales. The shop was an essential part of Lisa's life, and Clara wanted to ensure it was ready for her return. A new piece had arrived, an antique mirror with a gilded frame, likely from the mid-19th century. Clara placed it in the storefront window, where it drew curious gazes from passers-by. One of those passers-by was a man named Nathan, who was searching for unique items for a local charity event. He was tall, with slightly disheveled brown hair and a warm smile. Nathan and Clara struck up a brief conversation about the shop, and he expressed interest in meeting Lisa, mentioning that he had always admired her work with antiques. When Lisa finally visited the shop weeks later, she found Nathan examining the mirror. He greeted her with a friendly smile, introducing himself as a local entrepreneur passionate about supporting small businesses. Their conversation was brief, but something in the way he looked at Lisa, with respect and curiosity, left her intrigued. Their friendship developed naturally. Nathan began visiting the shop occasionally, sharing humorous stories about his life in Nashville. Slowly, Lisa found herself smiling again, something she hadn't done in a long time. Yet she knew she wasn't ready to open her heart just yet. While Lisa navigated the beginnings of a new connection, Adam was building the case against Charles. During his investigation, he uncovered something surprising. Charles' relationship with Grace wasn't an isolated affair. Bank records revealed significant transfers to her account, raising suspicions of blackmail. Adam presented this evidence to Lisa, who was stunned. Grace, whom she had once considered almost part of the family, hadn't just been complicit in the betrayal. She had seemingly used the situation for personal gain. The revelation added another layer of anger to Lisa's already complex emotions. Investigators located Grace, who had disappeared after the scandal. When confronted, she admitted that Charles had promised to help her start a small business in exchange for her silence about the marriage's problems. However, she insisted she had never imagined Charles would harm Lisa. This new information became a key part of the trial, strengthening the case against Charles. His betrayal, already reprehensible, was now tied to financial manipulation and abuse of power, making it impossible for him to avoid a severe sentence. Amid the courtroom chaos, Lisa began reconnecting with her parents, who had drifted away during her years of marriage to Charles. Simple yet deeply loving people, their reconnection brought Lisa unexpected comfort. Her father, a retired musician, began playing guitar for her during visits, filling the silences with soft melodies. With support from her family, Clara, and even Nathan, Lisa felt she had a network to help her rebuild her life. Yet there was one weight she still carried: the baby she had lost. At night, she often spoke silently to the child she would never know, promising to live a life worthy of them both. The day Lisa was called to testify, the courtroom was packed. She stepped up to the witness stand with firm steps, her gaze fixed straight ahead. Charles sat at the defense table, visibly defeated. When their eyes met, he seemed to search for something, perhaps forgiveness, perhaps understanding. But Lisa quickly looked away. With a clear and unwavering voice, Lisa recounted her story. She described the moment she discovered the betrayal, the accident, and finally the attempted murder. When she mentioned the baby, her voice trembled, but she pressed on, channeling her pain into strength. The silence that followed her testimony was profound. There was no doubt about the gravity of what she had endured. Adam concluded his argument masterfully, emphasizing not just the evidence, but the emotional toll Charles's actions had taken on Lisa. As Lisa left the courtroom that day, something shifted within her. It wasn't peace exactly, but a sense that at last she was reclaiming control of her life. Lisa walked through the park with Clara on a spring morning. The sun touched her skin with a softness she hadn't felt in months. It was her first time venturing out for a walk since the preliminary trial. The shop was closed for the day, and Clara had insisted she take in some fresh air. Children ran around, and the sound of laughter echoed in the distance. Lisa observed them, lost in thought, until Clara spoke and brought her back to the present. "Have you thought about what you really want to do when all of this is over?" Clara asked, her tone gentle but probing. Lisa took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the question. It was something she had avoided, as though confronting the future was more daunting than reliving the past. "I want justice, Clara. But more than that, I want to understand how it all came to this." Clara nodded, but before she could respond, Lisa continued, "Charles wasn't always like this, or at least I don't think he was. I need to know what I missed, what I ignored. Not for him, but for me. I need to understand." Later at home, Lisa pulled out a cardboard box she had kept under her bed. Inside were photos, letters, and small objects she had saved throughout her marriage. The box was a reflection of the years she and Charles had shared, from moments of happiness to those she now realized were built on lies. Among the items, Lisa found an envelope she had never seen before. The letter inside bore Charles's handwriting, but wasn't addressed to her. Curious and wary, she began to read. The contents were disjointed, filled with incomplete sentences and vague references. It seemed like a draft or something he had never finished. Yet a few lines stood out. "I can't keep this up, Grace. Everything I promised was just to maintain appearances. She can't know. If she finds out, it's all over." Lisa's heart raced. The letter seemed like a fragment of a larger puzzle, something Charles had hidden. The mention of Grace was clear, but what was he trying to protect? Determined to uncover more, Lisa reached out to Adam, the prosecutor. She told him about the letter and asked if there was anything in the case files that might connect to it. Adam promised to investigate, but cautioned her. "Sometimes digging into the past only brings more pain, Lisa. Be sure about what you're looking for." Days later, Adam returned with information that completely shifted Lisa's perspective. He had uncovered evidence that Charles had been involved in an illegal financial scheme for years. Using his position as a lawyer, he had siphoned small amounts from large transactions, amassing significant sums over time. The connection to Grace ran deeper than Lisa had imagined. She not only knew about the scheme, but appeared to have been helping cover it up in exchange for financial benefits. The harshest blow came when Adam revealed that some of the embezzled funds had come from clients who trusted Charles implicitly, including a charity project Lisa had helped promote early in their marriage. The sense of betrayal deepened. Charles hadn't just destroyed their personal life, he had tarnished something she held dear, her ethics and sense of justice. With this new information, Lisa began forming a plan. She knew she needed to confront Charles again, but not just in court. She wanted answers directly from him, answers that might help her close this chapter for good. The day she decided to visit him in prison, Lisa prepared herself as if for a battle. She dressed impeccably, not out of vanity, but to project the strength she felt growing within her. Clara tried to dissuade her, but Lisa was resolute. The prison visitation room was cold and desolate. Charles was brought in by 2 guards, handcuffed and visibly haggard. When he saw Lisa, his expression shifted, not to surprise but to a mix of curiosity and discomfort. "Lisa," he said, his voice hoarse. "Charles?" she replied, her tone steady. For a few seconds, they sat in silence, sizing each other up. Then Lisa placed the letter on the table between them. "I found this," she began, "and I know about the embezzlement. I'm not here for excuses. I'm here to understand why. Why did you think you could destroy everything we built? Why wasn't I enough?" Charles lowered his head. For a moment it seemed like he wouldn't answer, but then he began to speak, his voice heavy with regret. "It wasn't you, Lisa. It was never you. I've always been this way. Manipulative, selfish. You were everything I should have wanted, but I never knew how to appreciate it. I was always chasing something more, something I didn't even understand." Lisa studied his face, searching for any trace of sincerity in his words. "And Grace? She knew about the money." Charles nodded slowly. "She knew, but it didn't start with her. I was already doing it before I met her. She just saw an opportunity and took it." Lisa felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger at the casual way he admitted his wrongdoings, relief at finally understanding the extent of his betrayal. As she rose to leave, Charles tried to say more, but she cut him off. "You had choices, Charles. I chose to love you. I chose to fight for what we had, but you chose to destroy it. And now, I choose to free myself from all of this." As Lisa walked out of the prison, she felt the weight on her shoulders lighten. There was still a long road ahead, but that meeting marked the beginning of her true liberation. In the days that followed, Lisa worked with Adam to ensure the new evidence was incorporated into the case. The embezzlement and Grace's complicity further complicated Charles's situation, eliminating any possibility of a reduced sentence. The turning point wasn't just about understanding Charles, it was about Lisa rediscovering her own strength. She realized that by confronting the past, she was making room for a lighter, more honest future. Life in Nashville moved on like a river that never ceased to flow, but for Lisa, time seemed to move differently. Each day after her prison visit was an exercise in rebuilding, a challenge to come to terms with the truths she had uncovered about Charles and the strength she had found to confront them. In court, the new evidence against Charles caused a ripple of reactions. His embezzlement scheme revealed an even darker side of the man he had become, prompting victims to speak out publicly. Civil lawsuits emerged alongside the criminal trial, and the local press spared no detail, painting Charles as a complete villain in the eyes of the city. For Lisa, the following days were filled with interviews with lawyers and prosecutors. Adam, ever mindful of her emotional well-being, suggested she step back temporarily and let the professionals handle the legal intricacies. But Lisa refused. She felt compelled to be present, not only to ensure justice but also to reaffirm her control over the narrative of her life. However, despite her outward determination, there were moments when the pain felt unbearable. At night, in the silence of her home, Lisa was haunted by memories, not just of Charles's betrayals or the accident, but of the good times they had shared. She knew the loss of her baby would be a wound she carried forever, mingling with the shattered dreams of building a family. Clara, ever by her side, realized Lisa needed a break. On a Saturday, she insisted they close the shop early and attend a community event at a local park. The event featured a small business fair, live music, and booths with local food. Lisa hesitated, but eventually agreed. At the park, she encountered Nathan again. He was helping organize the event and seemed genuinely happy to see her. Nathan greeted her with his usual warm smile, and soon they were talking like old friends. He introduced her to other vendors, and before long Lisa found herself smiling and laughing, something she hadn't done since before the accident. While Lisa took small steps toward a lighter life, Charles faced the direct consequences of his choices. In prison, he began receiving letters from the clients he had defrauded. Some were filled with anger, while others expressed a quiet disappointment that hit him even harder. Meredith's words continued to echo in his mind. He finally understood what he had lost, but also knew it was too late to fix anything. For the first time, Charles began attending therapy sessions organized by the prison. It wasn't an effort to seek redemption in Lisa's eyes or society's, but an attempt to understand himself and why he had become the man he was. Back at the antique shop, Clara organized a special exhibition to attract more customers. Initially reluctant, Lisa eventually became involved in the project. Selecting pieces for the exhibition and recounting the stories behind each one proved therapeutic. During the event, Nathan appeared again and purchased one of the shop's oldest pieces, a 19th century pocket watch. He commented on how the watch symbolized the hope for second chances, a sentiment that stayed with Lisa for days. As the trial progressed, the courtroom sessions grew increasingly intense. Under pressure from his attorney, Charles finally confessed to the full extent of his crimes. His admission was a shock to the public, but to Lisa it was merely a confirmation of what she already knew. After the hearing, Adam informed Lisa that Charles's confession would likely result in a harsher sentence, though he had agreed to cooperate in recovering some of the embezzled funds. Lisa felt a mix of relief and indifference. Justice was being served, but nothing could restore what she had lost. The repercussions extended beyond the courtroom. Grace, implicated in the scheme, faced her own legal battles. She sent Lisa a letter apologizing for her role in everything. The letter was filled with regret, but also with excuses. Grace wrote about how she felt Charles had manipulated her as much as he had manipulated Lisa. Lisa read the letter carefully but felt no need to respond. There was no room for Grace in her life anymore, and forgiveness seemed an impossible prospect. As weeks passed, Lisa began to feel that she was truly starting to heal. Her bond with Nathan grew stronger, though she made it clear she wasn't ready for a new relationship. Nathan understood and never pressured her, offering only his friendship and support. He encouraged her to consider expanding her shop, suggesting she create a line of products inspired by the stories behind the pieces she sold. The idea sparked something in Lisa. It was a way to channel her creativity and personal journey into something meaningful. With help from Clara and some friends she had made at the community event, Lisa began planning the project. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of optimism about the future. On the day the trial concluded, Lisa sat in the courtroom's front row. The judge read the sentence: 45 years in prison for Charles, with the possibility of parole only after serving 30. The decision was harsh but fair, and Lisa felt a weight lift from her shoulders. As she left the courthouse, she found Clara and Nathan waiting for her. The sun shone brightly, and for the first time in a long while, Lisa felt she could breathe freely. The months following Charles's conviction brought a different kind of silence to Lisa's life, a silence that no longer weighed her down. It was the empty space left by pain, now gradually filled with something softer, a kind of peace beginning to bloom. Lisa had learned to live with her scars, both physical and emotional, not as reminders of weakness, but as symbols of her strength. At the antique shop, the idea of expanding the business quickly took shape. Lisa decided to create a line of handcrafted products inspired by the items she sold, with a modern twist. Small items like notebooks with covers replicating antique tapestry patterns and jewelry made from fragments of worn pieces started coming to life. The project not only revitalized the shop, but also gave Lisa a way to tell new stories, something she found deeply therapeutic. Nathan became an unexpected partner in this endeavor. As a local entrepreneur with marketing experience, he helped Lisa launch the new line. Though he remained respectful of Lisa's boundaries regarding a relationship, his steady presence became a source of reassurance during moments of doubt. One afternoon at the shop, while Nathan adjusted the lighting to better showcase the new pieces in the display window, he said something that stayed with Lisa. "You know, these pieces tell a story of transformation. You take something broken or forgotten and give it a new purpose. It's like what you're doing with your life right now." Lisa paused her work, glancing at him. His words weren't just a compliment about her work. They reflected what she felt about herself. For the first time, she smiled with a mix of gratitude and acceptance. Still, the process of healing wasn't linear. There were days when the pain of the past resurfaced, especially when she thought of the baby she had lost. On one such night, she went to the shop alone, sat at the small counter, and picked up one of the handmade notebooks she had created. She wrote a letter to the child she never got to know, expressing everything she felt, and promising to live a life they would be proud to witness if they were by her side. When she finished, Lisa placed the letter in a small wooden box she found among the antiques. She decided the box would hold memories symbolizing her journey of healing, not just the pain, but also the triumphs and moments of joy. While Lisa rebuilt her life, Charles walked a vastly different path. In prison, he immersed himself in therapy sessions, attempting to understand how he had reached a point where he destroyed not only his own life, but also Lisa's. He often wrote letters to Lisa, though he never sent them. These letters were confessions he didn't have the courage to deliver, but served as a mirror reflecting the mistakes he was finally beginning to acknowledge. In one of these letters he wrote, "Lisa, I know I'll never have the right to ask for forgiveness. Everything I did was out of selfishness, and only now do I understand the depth of what I destroyed. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I didn't know how to value that. I hope you find the happiness you've always deserved." As Charles confronted the demons he had created, Lisa found strength in her new purpose. The shop's new product line began to gain popularity, and she was invited to participate in local fairs and events. Each event was an opportunity to reconnect with the community and present herself as the strong, independent woman she was becoming. At one of these events, Lisa met a young woman named Abby, who was starting her own business, restoring antique furniture. Abby was shy, but her passion for her work was evident. Lisa saw a younger version of herself in Abby and decided to offer mentorship. Working with Abby became a new source of joy, showing Lisa that her journey of healing could also inspire others. Her relationship with Nathan continued to grow organically. He never pressured Lisa, but was always there, offering support and laughter at just the right moments. One quiet evening, as they strolled down a street lit with Christmas lights, Nathan stopped and looked at Lisa with a calm smile. "I know you still have things to work through, but I want you to know I'll be here, whether as a friend or something more, whenever you're ready." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, but not from sadness. Gratitude overwhelmed her. The moment symbolized something greater than she could put into words. "Thank you, Nathan," she managed to say, but the smile that followed conveyed so much more. Over time, Lisa realized that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but integrating it into her story in a way that didn't define who she was. The accident, the betrayal, the loss of her baby, all of it was part of her journey, but not her final destination. On a sunny Sunday, she officially opened a new section of the shop called Revividos, Revived, dedicated to products symbolizing transformation. The launch event was a success, and as Lisa thanked the customers, friends, and partners who supported her, she felt at peace with herself for the first time in years. Lisa knew there was still much to learn and experience, but for the first time, she looked toward the future with hope and determination. She was above all a survivor, and her life would not be defined by what she had lost, but by what she had gained. The success of Lisa's new product line brought a sense of stability she hadn't felt in years. The antique shop was busier than ever, and the regular events she organized became a gathering place for the local community. Slowly, Lisa felt she was finding her place in the world again. Yet, a persistent restlessness followed her. Even with all the positive changes, something still felt unfinished. Clara noticed this and decided to confront her friend one quiet day at the shop. "You're building a new life, Lisa, but it feels like you're still waiting for something. What's missing?" Lisa hesitated, unsure of how to put her feelings into words. "I don't know, Clara. I think part of me feels like I never got the closure I needed. Charles is in prison, justice has been served, but there's still something I need to face. Something that keeps pulling me back to the past." Clara held Lisa's hand, her gaze filled with understanding. "Maybe you need to forgive yourself for trusting someone who didn't deserve it, for believing you could change what was out of your control." Clara's words lingered in Lisa's mind for days. She knew that forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, was the hardest step, but also the most necessary. Meanwhile, Nathan continued to support Lisa in her initiatives while gently encouraging her to step out of her comfort zone. During a walk through Nashville's historic district, he pointed to an old theater undergoing renovations. "They're opening a space for small exhibitions and events," Nathan said. "You should consider showcasing your pieces there. Share your story with more people." Lisa laughed, finding the idea a bit bold. "Nathan, it's an antique shop, not an art gallery." "Maybe it's more than that now," he replied with a smile. The conversation stuck with Lisa. She began to entertain the idea, though the thought of putting her work on such public display made her nervous. It would be like opening a window into her life, allowing others to see not only what she had accomplished, but also what she had endured. Amid this reflection, Lisa received an unexpected letter from Charles. She hesitated before opening it, but curiosity won out. The letter was long and filled with confessions. Charles wrote about how prison had forced him to confront his mistakes and how he finally understood the depth of his betrayal. At the end, he mentioned something that took Lisa by surprise. "I know I can never make up for what I did, but there's something you need to know. There are details about the accident that were never revealed. If you want to hear them, have your attorney contact me. It's the least I can offer." The mention of the accident unsettled Lisa. As much as she wanted to leave the past behind, the idea that there was more to that night gnawed at her. After much deliberation, she decided to speak with Adam, the prosecutor, about the letter. Adam, who had become a trusted friend throughout the legal process, read the letter carefully before responding. "Lisa, this could just be another attempt by Charles to manipulate you, but if you want to move forward, I can arrange a supervised meeting. The choice is yours." Lisa spent days weighing her options. Part of her wanted to ignore Charles entirely, but another part needed to know. Deep down, she realized that to truly free herself, she had to confront everything that remained unresolved. When Lisa decided to attend the meeting, she prepared herself with the same strength and determination she had summoned before. The meeting was held in a private room at the prison, with Adam by her side. Charles looked different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and a demeanor marked by guilt. He began speaking hesitantly but clearly. "What I'm going to tell you isn't an excuse, Lisa. It's the truth. On the night of the accident, I was following you. After you ran out of the house, I got in my car and went after you. I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't know what to do. I saw you at the intersection. I was about to catch up to you when the other car appeared." Lisa felt the air leave her lungs. "You were there? You saw everything?" Charles nodded, his eyes filled with tears. "I saw it, but I ran. I couldn't handle what had happened. The other driver fled too, but I could have stayed. I could have called for help sooner, but I didn't." The silence in the room was deafening. Lisa struggled to process Charles's words, which added another layer of betrayal. He hadn't just tried to take her life. He had left her alone in her most vulnerable moment. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, her voice shaking with emotion. "Because I couldn't live with it anymore. I don't know if this changes anything for you, but I needed to tell you." Lisa left the meeting in a whirlwind of emotions. Knowing that Charles had been there that night added a new level of complexity to her feelings. The anger she thought she had overcome returned with force, but there was also something else, a sense of closure. For the first time, she knew the full truth. In the days that followed, Lisa immersed herself in work to process everything. She decided to take Nathan's suggestion and began planning a special exhibition at the renovated theatre. The event would be a celebration of her journey, a tribute to resilience, and the ability to transform pain into strength. As she curated pieces for the exhibition, Lisa realized each item told a part of her story. Some represented loss, others symbolized hope, and a few captured the essence of her new life. It was more than a collection of antiques. It was a narrative of transformation. As the exhibition date approached, Lisa felt the tension build. It wasn't just about the event, but about what it symbolized. A new chapter, a new identity. The night of the exhibition arrived faster than Lisa had anticipated. The newly renovated theatre was aglow with warm lights, and the displays showcasing her collection were bathed in a soft illumination that highlighted every detail. Guests began arriving, a mix of familiar faces and new ones. Clara stood by Lisa's side, adjusting last-minute details and offering encouraging words. Nathan, who had played a key role in organizing the event, remained in the background, his presence steady and reassuring. Lisa wore a simple yet elegant dress, the color of a twilight sky. Though nervous, there was a new light in her eyes, a quiet confidence she hadn't felt in years. Each piece in the exhibition told a story, reflecting fragments of her journey. Broken objects transformed into something beautiful, relics of the past, now symbols of renewal. When the event officially began, Lisa stepped onto a small stage at the center of the theater to address the guests. The room fell silent as she picked up the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each word. "This exhibition isn't just about antiques. It's about stories, about how even things that seem broken can be restored, transformed into something new. This is my story, but I hope it's also a reflection of something we all experience in some way." The applause was warm and heartfelt, and Lisa felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had shared her truth, and the response was more welcoming than she could have imagined. As she moved through the theater, engaging with guests and explaining the stories behind each piece, a man caught her attention. He stood before the display containing the wooden box where Lisa had placed the letter to her child. His expression was serious, almost contemplative. Lisa approached cautiously. "Do you like this piece?" she asked gently. The man turned, and Lisa recognized his face instantly. It was the driver of the car that had caused her accident. She felt the ground shift beneath her feet, but managed to keep her composure. I didn't know you'd be here," he said, his voice filled with surprise and uncertainty. "And I didn't expect to see you," Lisa replied, her tone laced with restrained emotion. The man took a deep breath before continuing. "My name is Thomas. I was the driver that night. I have no excuses for what I did. I was rushing, distracted, and by the time I realized, it was too late. I panicked and fled, but I've never been able to forget. When I saw the article about this exhibition, I knew I had to come." Lisa stood in silence, processing his words. It was as if the universe had chosen this night to close every unresolved chapter of her story. "Why now?" she asked, her voice firm but not accusatory. Thomas hesitated, his guilt evident. "Because I finally realized I can't run forever. I need to take responsibility for what I did, even if it's far too late." The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken emotions. Lisa took a deep breath, feeling the weight of a decision. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said honestly. "But I appreciate that you came, that you had the courage to tell me the truth. That's more than most would do." Thomas nodded, his eyes glistening with tears. "If there's anything I can do to make amends, please tell me. I'm willing to face the consequences, whatever they are." Lisa didn't respond immediately. Instead, she asked him to stay and experience the rest of the exhibition. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step toward closure. As the event continued, Lisa realized something within her had shifted. Thomas's presence that evening, combined with everything she had endured, felt like the closing of a cycle. She knew healing was a continuous process, but for the first time, she felt she could truly leave the past behind. Later, as the theater began to empty and guests said their goodbyes, Lisa found Nathan near the stage, organizing a few remaining boxes. He looked at her with a gentle smile, but seemed hesitant, as if waiting for something. "It was an incredible night," Nathan said, breaking the silence. "Yes, it was," Lisa replied, stepping closer to him. They stood face to face, the silence between them heavy with unspoken meaning. Lisa thought of everything Nathan had done for her, not just his practical support, but his patience, his unwavering understanding. For the first time, she felt she might be ready to take a new step. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. Nathan smiled again, but before he could respond, Lisa continued, "I know I haven't been easy to deal with. I'm still learning to trust, to open up, but I want to try. I want to see where this might take us." Nathan's smile widened, and he gently took her hand. "I've been waiting for this for a long time," he said softly. The theater was empty now, except for the two of them, but in that moment, Lisa felt surrounded by light. The theater was empty the next morning, but the impact of the exhibition still echoed in Lisa's mind. She had spent part of the night arranging the final pieces and reflecting on the moments that had brought her to this point. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the overwhelming weight of pain. The scars were still there, but they were no longer marks of defeat. They had become symbols of her resilience. Nathan arrived with 2 cups of coffee, a habit he had developed during the weeks they spent preparing for the exhibition. He handed one to Lisa, who accepted it with a grateful smile. "Did you get any sleep?" he asked. "Not much," she replied with a laugh. "My mind was busy, but it felt good for a change." Nathan sat beside her on the empty stage, and together they looked out at the space that had been filled with people and energy the night before. "You know you did something incredible here, right?" he said, glancing at her. Lisa shook her head thoughtfully. "It was more than just an exhibition, it was a milestone, proof that I can keep moving forward no matter what." They sat in companionable silence, and Lisa realized that this was a new beginning, not just for her, but for how she viewed the world and the people around her. In the months that followed, Lisa dedicated herself to expanding her shop and its new product line. She began collaborating with other local artists, creating a supportive network that strengthened Nashville's creative community. The shop became more than a place to purchase unique items. It was a space where people could share stories and build connections. Her friendship with Nathan grew into something deeper and more solid. He never rushed her, allowing Lisa to set the pace as she worked through her emotions. Together they explored Nashville, discovering hidden cafes and quiet parks, as if seeing the city with fresh eyes. Meanwhile, Charles faced a very different reality. In prison, he continued attending therapy sessions and writing letters he never sent. Though his confession and apparent remorse were genuine, he knew he could never undo the harm he had caused. Eventually, he was transferred to a maximum security facility in another state, marking the definitive end of his presence in Lisa's life. Grace, having cooperated with prosecutors, completed her legal obligations by paying fines and serving community service. She left Nashville to start over elsewhere. Lisa learned about this through Adam, but felt no need to delve further. Grace was part of a closed chapter. The connection with Thomas, the driver from the accident, also took an unexpected turn. After the exhibition, he volunteered to support causes Lisa cared about as a way to make amends. Initially reluctant, she eventually gave him a chance to contribute positively. Thomas began volunteering for community projects, and while their relationship never became close, mutual respect emerged over time. Lisa also found ways to honor the memory of the child she had lost. Every year, on the estimated birth date, she planted a tree in a special location. The act was simple yet profoundly meaningful, symbolizing growth and life in the face of loss. One year, Nathan joined her for the ceremony. As Lisa patted the final bit of soil around a young magnolia tree, Nathan gently held her hand. "You've turned so much pain into something beautiful," he said, giving her fingers a gentle squeeze. Lisa looked at him, and for the first time, she felt fully at peace with everything she had accomplished. On the 5th anniversary of her shop's relaunch, Lisa organized a special event. Friends, customers, and community members gathered to celebrate the space that had become a symbol of resilience and renewal. Clara, in her usual heartfelt manner, delivered a speech about Lisa's journey, highlighting how she had not only rebuilt herself, but also inspired so many others around her. At the end of the evening, as the sun set over Nashville, Lisa stepped onto a small stage set up in front of the shop. She looked out at the gathered crowd, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Thank you for being here today," she began, her voice filled with emotion. "This shop started as a refuge, a place where I could hide from my pain. But over time, it became so much more. It's a place for stories, for connections, for healing. Not just for me, but for everyone who walks through these doors." The applause was warm and genuine, and Lisa felt her eyes well up with tears. Later, when the celebration had ended and everyone had gone, Lisa stayed behind in the shop, taking a moment to herself. She looked around at the objects that surrounded her, each one with a story, just like her. For the first time, she felt that all the pieces of her life were connected in a way that made sense. She caught her reflection in the restored gilded mirror that held a place of honor in the shop. What she saw wasn't just the woman who had survived an accident, a betrayal, or the loss of a child. She saw someone who had chosen to live fully, even when it seemed impossible. That night, as she turned off the lights and locked the door, Lisa stepped into Nashville's glowing streets with a light heart. Her past would always be a part of her, but her future was hers to shape. If this story touched your heart and you'd like to keep exploring inspiring and emotional tales, make sure to check out our upcoming videos. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can illuminate your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us as we continue diving into stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will move you as well, so click on it now, and I'll see you there.